My son's voice, a terrified whisper on the phone, sliced through me. "Dad." He choked out, "He hurt me again." Then a man's arrogant laugh cut in, saying, "You're a soldier 1,000 miles away. You can't do a thing. My brothers run this town." In that moment, something inside me shattered, and I knew. No distance, no threat would keep me from my boy. I'd learned to read men not through their words, but through the haunted weight of their silence, the trembling in their hands when everything went to hell. 12 years with the Rangers in places like Kandahar, I'd become fluent in a language most men never even glimpsed, the raw vocabulary of violence, the brutal grammar of survival. They called me Ice because nothing seemed to rattle me. Firefights, IEDs, night raids. I moved through it all with a chilling calm, like a man who'd already accepted the worst and decided it wouldn't stop him. Growing up in rural Montana, my rancher father taught me a man's word was his bond, and his fist a last resort. When I was 17, my old man broke his back, and I ran that ranch alone all summer, 16-hour days under a merciless sun. That's where I learned I could endure anything, absolutely anything. When we sold the ranch, I enlisted, chasing something I couldn't quite articulate, something to prove. The Army refined me, turned me into steel. I earned my Ranger tab through blood, sweat, and a singular, almost obsessive focus. But then there was Tammy. We met at a USO event in 2019. She had these dark eyes that seemed to see right through my armor, and for the first time in years, I felt something beyond the mission. We married 4 months later, and then, 10 months after that, Tommy was born. He was my whole world, yet I was always a world away. I tried to balance it all, deployments, family, the impossible demands of both. But Tammy grew tired. Tired of being a military wife, tired of the empty side of the bed, tired of raising Tommy alone. The divorce papers found me in Syria. It was civil, clean, joint custody. But joint custody was theoretical at best with my deployment schedule. Tommy was 7 now, and I hadn't seen him in person for 8 months. Video calls, carefully wrapped presents shipped from overseas, promises that Daddy will be home soon. It was never enough, but it was all I had. I was in the operations tent at Forward Operating Base Raven, sifting through intel reports with Felix Galloway and Bernie Graham, my squad mates. The Syrian desert outside was bleeding into dusk, painting everything in shades of blood and sand. Felix, sharp as always, noticed the tension in my jaw. "You good, Ice?" he asked. "Always," I said, but my mind was miles away, haunted by Tommy's last video call. He'd seemed nervous, his eyes darting off screen. I'd brushed it off as kid stuff, but a cold knot of dread had been tightening in my gut ever since. Then my personal satellite phone rang. Not the official line. My stomach clenched. Personal calls out here? They only meant one thing. Emergency. I answered. "Dad." Tommy's voice was a whisper, tight with pure, unadulterated fear. My entire body went rigid. "Tommy, what's wrong, buddy?" The words came in a rush, barely audible. "Dad, Mom's new man hurt me again." White noise filled my head, a roaring like an avalanche. My hand clenched the phone so hard my knuckles went bone white. "Tommy, where is he?" The phone rustled. Then a man's voice, thick with arrogance, dripping with contempt. "You heard the boy. My brothers run this town. You come home, soldier boy, and you're going to find out what happens to heroes who stick their nose where it don't belong." Then the line went dead. Just like that. I don't remember crossing the compound to Captain Valencia's tent. One moment, I was staring at my silent phone. The next, I was standing in front of my commanding officer's desk. My voice was steady, somehow, despite the absolute fury burning through my veins. "Sir," I said, "I need emergency leave. My son is in immediate danger." Valencia looked up from his paperwork, studying my face. He was a 20-year veteran, came up through the ranks, and he recognized the look in my eyes. It was the same look men got just before they did something that couldn't be undone. "Explain," Valencia said, simply. I told him everything, my voice never wavering, though my insides were screaming. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "You know what you're asking me to do, Sergeant?" "Yes, sir." "And you know what you're going back to do?" "Yes, sir." He studied me for a long, heavy moment. Then, he picked up his phone. Give me transport command. Priority flight out. And get me Master Sergeant Vince Rios. 20 minutes later, Vince Rios walked in, followed by Felix Galloway, Bernie Graham, Jonathan Garza, and Bill Blackwell. These were my fire team. The men I'd served with for 3 straight years. Men who'd carried me when I was hit in Mosul, who'd held the line in Raqqa when everything went to hell. They were my brothers. Gentlemen, Valencia said, his eyes moving across each of their faces. Sergeant Kane has a family emergency. I'm granting him emergency leave, effective immediately. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. I'm also granting all of you leave. You're going with him. Felix, ever the one to speak up, started, Sir, we didn't request. I know what you didn't request, Corporal. Valencia cut him off, his voice hardening just a touch. And I know what you're going to do anyway. So let's make it official. 2 weeks emergency leave. All of you. If anyone asks, you were visiting Sergeant Kane's family for moral support. His gaze swept over us again. But understand this, you are still soldiers. You represent this unit, this army, and this nation. Whatever you do, whatever happens, I expect you to conduct yourselves accordingly. The unspoken message was clear. Don't get caught. Don't embarrass us. Do what needs doing. Yes, sir, we replied in unison. 8 hours later, I was in a cargo transport, heading for Ramstein Air Base in Germany, then onto the States. My team surrounded me, weapons cleaned and stowed, but each man wore the same blank, focused look. The look of operators preparing for a mission. If you're still with me, still wondering how this wild story unfolds, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. What's the situation on the ground? Vince asked. At 34, he was the oldest, a career NCO with a wife and 2 daughters back in Texas. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the research I'd been conducting during flight prep. My ex-wife, Tammy, has been seeing a guy named Gilberto Barajas. Small-time criminal in Ridgefield, Oregon. Population 12,000. Barajas has 2 brothers, Rafael and Jeremy. All 3 have records: assault, drug possession, extortion. Police. Bernie asked, his eyes narrowing. I called Oregon State Police from a base, reported the abuse. My jaw tightened. They said they'd send someone to do a welfare check. That was 6 hours ago. No call back. Bill Blackwell, our comm specialist, pulled out a laptop. Let me see what I can dig up. For the next 2 hours, as the transport droned across the Atlantic, Bill worked his magic. What he found painted an ugly, sickening picture. The Barajas brothers aren't small time, Bill said finally, his voice grim. They're part of a larger network. Their uncle, Valentine Vaughn, runs a drug distribution operation across 3 counties. The brothers are his enforcers. And get this, Ridgefield's police chief, Peter Sharp, has a brother-in-law who works for Vaughn. The whole damn department is compromised. How compromised? I asked, my voice dangerously low. 3 complaints filed against the Barajas brothers in the last 2 years. Assault, domestic violence, intimidation. All of them disappeared from the system. No follow-up. No charges. I felt the ice in my chest spread, numbing everything except the burning need for justice. This wasn't just about getting Tommy safe. This was about dismantling an entire network that thought it was untouchable. All right, I said quietly, looking at my team. Then we do this the hard way. We landed at Portland International at 0600. I called ahead to Horace Pierce, an old Army buddy who'd left the service a couple years earlier and opened a security consulting firm. He met us at the airport with 2 SUVs, no questions asked. Good to see you, Ice, Horace said, gripping my hand. Heard you needed some support. Always do, I replied. What do you know about Ridgefield? Small town, big problems, he said, grimacing. The Vaughn operation is the worst-kept secret in the county. They move meth and heroin up from California through the I-5 corridor. Everyone knows, nobody does anything. We drove to Ridgefield in convoy, rolling into town just after sunrise. I directed them past the small downtown, past the local diner and the hardware store, to Tammy's neighborhood. It was a modest area, working-class homes with chain-link fences and tired lawns. Tammy's house was a small blue Rambler at the end of a cul-de-sac. My throat tightened as I saw Tommy's bike lying in the front yard, one wheel slowly spinning in the morning breeze. Eyes open, Vince murmured. Black Escalade, 3 houses down, 2 men inside. I'd already seen them. Watchers. The Barajas brothers weren't taking chances. Bernie, Felix, you're with me. Everyone else, maintain position and surveillance. Bill, get eyes in the sky. Bill had a commercial drone, small enough to be invisible, powerful enough to give us a complete picture. I approached the front door, my team flanking me. I knocked 3 times, firm but not aggressive. The door opened a crack, and Tammy's face appeared. She looked older than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes and a fresh bruise on her cheekbone that makeup didn't quite hide. Scott. Her voice cracked. What are you? Where's Tommy? I cut her off. She glanced over her shoulder, then stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. You can't be here. Gilberto. Gilberto? Where's Tommy? He's at school. Scott, please. You need to leave. You don't know what these people are capable of. Then tell me. Tammy's hands shook as she wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't know. Not at first. Gilberto was charming, attentive. He had money. I thought he was a contractor or something. By the time I figured out what he really did, I was already too deep. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He said if I left him, if I went to the police, his family would hurt Tommy. Hurt me. I saw what they did to a woman who testified against Raphael. She disappeared. Scott, they found her car in a ravine 2 months later, but they never found her. The raw fear in her voice was sickening. How long has he been hurting Tommy? 3 months. It started with yelling, then pushing. Last week, he couldn't finish school. I felt Felix's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. When I spoke, my voice was calm, almost gentle. Tammy, I need you to trust me. Can you get Tommy out of school early? Say it's a family emergency. Gilberto will know. He has people watching. Let them watch. What time does Tommy get out of school normally? 3 o'clock. Where's Gilberto now? He left this morning. Said he had business. She looked at me with desperate, fragile hope. Can you really get us out of this? I'm going to do better than that, I said. I'm going to make sure they never hurt anyone again. After Tammy went back inside, Bill had the drone footage pulled up on his laptop. Got something interesting, he said. There's a warehouse on the industrial side of town. A lot of traffic coming and going. Our friends in the Escalade have been in radio contact with someone there. Vaughn's operation? Felix asked. Most likely, but there's more. I pulled property records. The warehouse is owned by a shell company, but I traced it back. Guess who's listed as a silent partner? Don't tell me, Vince muttered. Police Chief Peter Sharp. Not directly. It's buried under his wife's maiden name and 3 other LLCs. But it's there. I nodded slowly. So, we were dealing with a criminal enterprise with police protection. They thought they were bulletproof. What's the play? Bernie asked. I looked at my team, these men who'd followed me into hell more times than I could count. We go to Tommy's school. Secure him first. Then we start taking apart their operation piece by piece. But we do it smart. We document everything, build a case that can't be ignored. And when they come for us, and they will, we make sure we're ready. And if they don't give us a choice? Vince asked quietly. My eyes were cold as winter in Montana. Then we handle it the way we handled Mosul. Ridgefield Elementary was a sprawling brick building. I walked into the main office at 2 p.m., alone and in civilian clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, a baseball cap. Just another parent. Can I help you? The secretary, a pleasant woman in her 50s, asked. I'm Scott Kane, Tommy Kane's father. Here to pick him up early. Family emergency. Her fingers flew across her keyboard. I'll need an ID, and I need to verify you're on the approved pickup list. I handed over my driver's license. She studied it, then her screen, and frowned. I'm sorry, Mr. Kane, but you're not on the list. Only his mother, and she paused uncomfortably. And Mr. Barajas are authorized. I'm his father. I have joint custody. Understand, sir, but we need to follow protocol. If you can have Tommy's mother call us and add you to the list. I leaned forward slightly, my voice low but urgent, laced with a steel she might not recognize. Ma'am, my son called me yesterday. and told me he's being hurt. I flew halfway around the world to protect him. Now, you can call the police if you want. I'd actually appreciate that. But I'm not leaving without my son." The secretary's face went pale. She'd seen the bruises on Tommy, had reported them herself to Child Protective Services 2 weeks ago. Nothing had happened. She'd been told the case was under review. "Let me get the principal," she said quietly. Principal Joan Andrews, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with 40 years in education, listened to my story. She saw the military ID that confirmed I was who I claimed. She made a decision. "I'll release Tommy to you," she said, "but I'm also calling CPS and the Oregon State Police. This situation needs to be investigated properly." "I'd expect nothing less," I replied. "Thank you." 20 minutes later, Tommy walked out of his classroom, saw me standing in the hallway, and broke into a run. I caught him, held him tight, felt his small body shaking. "You came," Tommy whispered, his voice muffled against my chest. "Always, buddy, always." As we walked to the SUV where Felix waited, I examined my son. A fading bruise on his arm, another on his ribs, visible when his shirt rode up. Rage cold and precise. Burned in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. "You're safe now," I told Tommy. "Nobody's going to hurt you again." We drove to a motel on the outskirts of town, a place Bill had scouted. The team had taken 4 adjoining rooms, turning them into a makeshift operations center. Horace had brought additional supplies, surveillance equipment, secure comms gear, enough to sustain us for 2 weeks. Tommy sat on one of the beds, eating pizza, while Vince showed him pictures of his own daughters. I stepped outside with Bill and Bernie. "Police chief just got a call from the school," Bill said, monitoring the scanner. "He's dispatching 2 officers to Tammy's house." "Good," I said. "Let them do their job. We stay clean. But I want eyes on that warehouse tonight. Full surveillance. Who comes? Who goes? Where are they moving?" That night, Felix and I conducted the reconnaissance personally. The warehouse sat at the end of a dead-end road, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Security cameras covered the approaches, but they were cheap commercial models, easily avoided. We moved through the darkness like shadows, using the skills drilled into us through years of night operations. From a high position 50 meters out, we watched through thermal optics. "I count 6 individuals inside," Felix murmured. "Heavy activity near the loading dock. Looks like they're packaging something." "Drugs," I said. "They're preparing a shipment." As we watched, 3 vehicles arrived: a Mercedes SUV, a Lexus sedan, and a beat-up pickup truck. Men emerged, including 2 I recognized from Bill's research, Jeremy and Rafael Barajas. Then, Gilberto Barajas stepped out of the Mercedes. I'd studied the man's photo, but seeing him in person crystallized everything. Gilberto was 6'2", heavily built, with slicked-back hair and expensive clothes. He moved with the swagger of a man who'd never been held accountable for anything. This was the man who'd hurt my son. "Easy," Felix whispered, sensing my tension. We observed for 2 more hours, documenting everything with high-resolution photos and video. This was no amateur hour. The warehouse operation was sophisticated, multiple distribution points, careful packaging, professional-grade security. As we prepared to extract, my phone buzzed. A text from Bill. "Incoming. 2 vehicles heading your direction. Move now." We melted into the darkness, reaching our vehicle just as headlights swept across the road behind us. Someone had spotted us, or suspected surveillance. "They're getting nervous," Felix said as we drove away. "That's good. Nervous people make mistakes." I nodded, but my mind was already on the next phase. I had the intelligence. Now it was time to start applying pressure. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to the FBI field office in Portland. I identified myself, provided my military credentials, and reported a large-scale drug distribution operation with law enforcement corruption. The agent who took my call was professional but skeptical until I mentioned I had photographic evidence and surveillance footage. "I can have an agent meet you this afternoon," the agent said. "Make it 2 agents," I replied, "and bring someone from the DEA." The second call was to a lawyer Horace recommended, Lauren Navarro, a former prosecutor who'd left the DA's office after butting heads with corrupt officials once too often. She agreed to represent me in the custody matter and to review my evidence of the criminal enterprise. The third call was to a journalist, Mandy Bruce, an investigative reporter with the Portland Tribune who'd written extensively about rural drug operations and police corruption. "Mr. Kane," she said when we met for coffee, "I've been trying to crack the Vaughn organization for 2 years." "I have it," I said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Full surveillance from last night. Faces, vehicles, license plates. Enough to start connecting dots." Mandy studied me, her gaze piercing. "Why are you doing this? You could just take your son and leave." "Because Tommy isn't the only kid in this town," I said, the words heavy with conviction. "And these people will keep hurting others until someone stops them." By afternoon, the pressure was mounting. The FBI agents, a veteran named Francis Mesa and a younger agent named Ariel Peak, reviewed my evidence with increasing interest. The DEA agent, a hard-eyed woman named Kristen Vang, made 3 phone calls during the meeting, each one more urgent than the last. "This is solid," Francis said finally. "But I need to be straight with you. Building a case against a protected organization takes time. We're talking months of investigation, wiretaps, surveillance. If they know we're looking at them, they'll destroy evidence and disappear. So, don't let them know," I said. "I can keep the pressure on. Make them think it's just me. Just a father protecting his son. By the time they realize they're under federal investigation, it'll be too late." Kristen Vang leaned forward, her eyes assessing. "You're talking about making yourself bait. I'm talking about doing what needs to be done." What I didn't tell them was that I'd already started. That morning, Bill had done something beautiful with his computer skills. He'd accessed the Barajas brothers' phones, not to wiretap them, which would be illegal, but to send them each a single photograph. The photograph showed Gilberto Barajas at the warehouse, clearly visible, time-stamped, and geotagged. Below it, a simple message: "Smile, you're being watched." The message came from an untraceable number, routed through 7 different servers across 4 countries, but its effect was immediate. By noon, my team observed Gilberto making frantic calls. By early afternoon, all 3 Barajas brothers convened at a local bar, Murphy's Tavern, a known hangout for their crew. Bill's drone captured the meeting, even catching Police Chief Peter Sharp in the parking lot. "They're panicking," Bernie observed, watching the footage. "Look at the body language." "Good," I said. "Panic makes people dangerous, but it also makes them sloppy." That evening, I took Tommy to dinner at a family restaurant in downtown Ridgefield. It was a calculated move, public, visible, normal. I wanted the Barajas brothers to see that I wasn't hiding. We were halfway through our meal when Jeremy Barajas walked in with 2 other men. He saw me immediately, his face darkening. For a long moment, our eyes locked. Then Jeremy smiled, a cold, predatory expression, and walked over. "Scott Kane," he said, his voice laced with false friendliness. "The famous war hero. My brother told me you were in town." I stood slowly, positioning myself between Jeremy and Tommy. "And you must be one of the cowards who threatens children." Jeremy's smile didn't waver, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Careful, soldier boy. You might be tough overseas, but you're in our world now." "Your world," I said quietly, my voice like steel, "is about to get a lot smaller." The 2 men with Jeremy shifted, hands moving toward their waistbands. I didn't move, didn't blink. I'd faced down armed insurgents in Fallujah. These thugs didn't scare me. "Is there a problem here?" The restaurant owner, an older man named Stevie Shields, emerged from the kitchen. He held a baseball bat and a phone. "Because I've already called the police, and I'm recording everything." Jeremy glanced at the phone, then back at me. "No problem. Just saying hello to an old friend." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "My uncle wants to meet you. Valentine Vaughn. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Murphy's Tavern. Come alone." "I'll be there," I said. After Jeremy left, Stevie apologized profusely. I thanked him, paid for the meal, and took Tommy back to the motel. "Dad," Tommy asked as we drove, his voice small, "are you going to be okay?" I looked at my son in the rearview mirror, my heart aching with fierce love and resolve. "I promise you, buddy, this is all going to be over soon." That night, The team gathered for a tactical briefing. They're inviting you into a trap, Vince said, stating the obvious. Murphy's is their territory. They'll have every advantage. I know, I said, which is why we're going to flip the script. Bill, can you get eyes and ears inside Murphy's? Already working on it, he replied. The place has Wi-Fi, which means I can access their security cameras. I can also place some wireless microphones. Plant them during the lunch rush. Nobody will notice. Good. Felix, Bernie, I want you outside with Overwatch positions. Jonathan, you're my backup. You'll be inside, playing the drunk regular. Vince, you coordinate with our FBI friends. If this goes sideways, I want federal agents on standby. And if Vaughn wants to talk business. Horace asked. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then we'll talk, and I'll make sure every word is recorded. Inadmissible in court, maybe, but deadly outside it. Murphy's Tavern smelled like stale beer and cigarette smoke, a stench that had soaked into the wood over decades. I walked in at precisely 8 p.m., wearing jeans, a black t-shirt, and a leather jacket. I knew I was being scanned for weapons. Valentine Vaughn wouldn't risk a meeting without security, so I'd left my sidearm in the SUV. I didn't need it. This wasn't that kind of meeting. Valentine Vaughn sat in a booth at the back, surrounded by 4 men. He was in his 50s, lean and sharp-featured, with silver hair and cold eyes. He wore an expensive suit that looked completely out of place in this dive bar. Sergeant Kane, Vaughn said, gesturing to the seat across from him. Thank you for coming. I slid into the booth. Jonathan Garza sat 3 tables away, hunched over a beer, the perfect picture of a lonely drunk. I could feel, rather than see, Felix and Bernie in their positions outside, rifles ready. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said. You wanted to meet. Here I am. Vaughn smiled, a thin, humorless curl of his lips. I appreciate that. I'll be direct, too. You're causing problems for my organization. The school incident, the surveillance, the federal agents asking questions. This needs to stop. Your nephew hurt my son. That needs to stop. Gilberto has a temper. He'll be dealt with. Not good enough. Vaughn's smile faded, replaced by a chilling arrogance. You don't seem to understand your situation, Sergeant. I run 3 counties. I have police, judges, lawyers on my payroll. You're one man with a grudge. How do you think this ends? I leaned forward, my voice dropping, imbued with a quiet, lethal certainty. It ends with you in a federal prison. See, while you've been building your little empire, I've been building a case. The FBI has my evidence. The DEA is watching your warehouse. And in about, I check my watch, 10 minutes, a story is going to drop in the Portland Tribune detailing your entire operation with photos. Vaughn's face went still, all pretense of smile gone. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your phone. Vaughn pulled out his phone, his fingers moving rapidly. His face went pale, a sickly white. Mandy Bruce's story had just gone live online, complete with photographs and a detailed breakdown of the Vaughn organization structure. You made a mistake, I said quietly, watching him. You thought you were untouchable. You thought hurting a kid wouldn't matter because his father was too far away. But I'm not far away anymore. And I'm not stopping until every one of you is behind bars. Vaughn's men tensed, hands moving toward their weapons. I didn't move. You pull those guns, I said, my voice cutting through the sudden silence. And everyone you see gets caught on camera. Bill had already shown them. On every screen in the bar, the TV above the counter, the old-school arcade machine in the corner, even the jukebox display. The same image appeared, a live feed from the security cameras, showing the booth, showing Vaughn's men reaching for their weapons. Say cheese, I said. You're live on the internet. Bill had hacked every device in the bar, streaming to multiple platforms. Thousands of people were watching. Vaughn's jaw clenched, his eyes burning with impotent fury. Turn it off. Not until we're done talking. Here's how this works. You and your organization are finished. The feds are coming. You can cooperate, cut a deal, maybe see daylight before you're 70, or you can fight. In which case, I'll make sure they add every charge they can think of. Your choice. And Gilberto is done hurting people. If he comes near my son again, if he comes near Tammy, if he even thinks about retaliating, I will end him. I don't mean legally. Do you understand? Vaughn stared at me for a long moment, the coldness in his eyes warring with a dawning realization of defeat. You're threatening to kill him. I'm promising to protect my family, however necessary. For the first time, something like grudging respect flickered in Vaughn's eyes. You know, Sergeant, in another life, you'd have made a good soldier for my organization. In another life, I said, rising from the booth, you'd have made an honest living. I stood to leave, then paused. Oh, and Vaughn? Tell Peter Sharp his career is over. The FBI knows about his partnership. He'll be arrested tomorrow morning. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern, knowing. Every eye in the place was on me. I just painted a huge target on my back. But I'd also made my position crystal clear. The Vaughn organization could surrender or fight, but either way, they were going down. The question was, what would they choose? The answer came at 0200 hours. I was in my motel room, Tommy asleep in the other bed, when Bill's voice crackled through my radio. Multiple vehicles approaching your position. At least 8 men, all armed. I was moving before Bill finished speaking. I scooped Tommy up, the boy waking with a start, and carried him to the adjoining room, where Vince was on watch. Take him, I ordered, my voice urgent. Get him to Horace's safe house. Now, Dad. Tommy's voice was small, frightened. It's okay, buddy. Uncle Vince is going to keep you safe. I'll see you soon. Vince didn't argue. He wrapped Tommy in a blanket and disappeared through the back door, moving fast toward a vehicle we'd positioned for exactly this scenario. I turned to my remaining team. They're coming hard. Felix, Bernie, Jonathan. We hold him here, but we do it clean. No kill shots unless absolutely necessary. These men need to stand trial. You sure about that? Bernie asked, checking his rifle. Because they're not coming to talk. I'm sure, I said, my resolve unshaken. We're soldiers, not executioners. The attack came 3 minutes later. 2 vehicles pulled into the parking lot, disgorging armed men. They weren't subtle. They were here to send a message. But I'd spent the last 2 days preparing this location. Bill had rig cameras, motion sensors, and remote access to the motel's electrical and security systems. We knew they were coming before they even exited their vehicles. Lights out, Bill said from his position in a third-floor room. Every light in the parking lot and surrounding motel rooms went dark, plunging the area into absolute blackness. The attackers hesitated, suddenly blind. My team and I, equipped with night vision goggles, moved like ghosts. We'd done this 1,000 times in hostile territory. Urban warfare, close quarters, neutralizing armed threats. I dropped the first attacker with brutal efficiency, sweeping his legs and driving an elbow into his temple. He went down hard, unconscious before he hit the ground. Felix took out 2 more, moving with the fluid grace of a martial artist. Gunfire erupted, wild and panicked. The attackers were shooting blind, rounds punching into motel walls and vehicles. I moved through the chaos, disarming another attacker, using the man's own momentum to slam him into a parked car. FBI, drop your weapons. The voice came from the street. Francis Mesa and 6 other federal agents poured into the parking lot, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The remaining attackers, realizing they were surrounded and outgunned, threw down their weapons and dropped to their knees. It was over in 90 seconds. As the agents secured the attackers, Francis approached me. You knew they were coming. I suspected they might, I said. That's why I called you 6 hours ago. You used yourself as bait. I used myself as evidence. Every one of these men is guilty of attempted murder, assault with deadly weapons, conspiracy. You can trace them back to Vaughn and Gilberto Barajas. He led them here himself. I saw him in the second vehicle. Francis shook her head, but she was smiling slightly. You're either very brave or very crazy, Sergeant Kane. I'm a father, I said simply, the truth of it ringing clear. The next morning, the arrests began. The FBI, working with Oregon State Police and DEA, executed search warrants across 3 counties. Valentine Vaughn was taken into custody at his mansion. Police Chief Peter Sharp was arrested at his home. Rafael and Jeremy Barajas were picked up at the warehouse. And Gilberto Barajas, facing charges that would put him away for 20 years, did something unexpected. He tried to run. Gilberto Barajas made it 60 miles before his luck ran out. He'd fled in his Mercedes, heading for the California border, but I'd anticipated this possibility. Working with the FBI, we put out an alert to every law enforcement agency in the region. When Gilberto's vehicle was spotted on Highway 101, a tactical team was ready. The chase ended on a rural stretch of road. Gilberto tried to make a stand, reaching for a gun, but the federal agents weren't playing games. They swarmed his vehicle, dragging him out, slamming him to the pavement. I watched it happen from the command vehicle, Frances Mesa beside me. "That's all of them," she said. "The entire organization from top to bottom." But I knew there was one more piece to handle. That afternoon, I drove back to Ridgefield with Vincent Felix. We went to Tammy's house, where she was packing, preparing to move. "Scott," she said when she saw me. She looked like a different person. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by cautious hope. "I heard about the arrests. Is it really over?" "It's over. Gilberto's in federal custody. He'll face charges for what he did to Tommy, plus attempted murder, assault on federal agents, a dozen other counts. He's not getting out." Tammy collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I should have protected him better. I should have. You did what you could in an impossible situation," I said gently. "That's over now. You and Tommy are safe. What happens now with custody?" I had thought about this a lot. I'm going back to active duty. My deployment ends in 3 months, and then I'm putting in for a stateside assignment. I want to be part of Tommy's life again, really be part of it. But that means working together, being co-parents, not enemies. "I'd like that," Tammy said softly, a tentative smile gracing her lips. We spent the next hour working out arrangements. Tammy would move to Vancouver, Washington, closer to my eventual duty station at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Tommy would have consistent time with both parents. We'd go to therapy, all 3 of us, to work through the trauma. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation, but it was real, and it was right. That evening, I took Tommy to a park overlooking the Columbia River. The boy had been quiet since his rescue, processing everything the way kids do, through play, through routine, through small questions that revealed deeper fears. "Dad," Tommy asked as we sat on a bench, watching the sun set over the water, "are the bad men really gone?" "They're gone, buddy. They're in jail, and they're going to stay there for a very long time." "Because of you?" I considered his answer carefully. "Because a lot of good people work together. The FBI, the police officers who weren't corrupt, the journalists who told the truth, my team who came to help. Nobody does these things alone. But you started it. I did what any father would do. I protected my son." Tommy leaned against me, small and warm. "I knew you'd come. Even when Gilberto said you couldn't, I knew." I wrapped my arm around my son, feeling something unlock deep in my chest. "I will always come for you, Tommy. No matter where I am, no matter what happens. That's a promise." 3 weeks later, I stood in federal court in Portland, watching Valentine Vaughn, Peter Sharp, and the Barajas brothers arraigned. The charges were extensive: drug trafficking, racketeering, corruption, assault, attempted murder. The judge denied bail for all of them. Gilberto Barajas, facing an additional charge of child abuse, would go to trial in 3 months. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. Testimony from Tommy, from Tammy, from teachers who'd seen the bruises. Combined with his other charges, he was looking at life without parole. After the arraignment, I met with Frances Mesa and Kristen Vang outside the courthouse. "We couldn't have done this without you," Frances said. "Your evidence, your testimony, it was all crucial. I just want to make sure it sticks," I said, "that they don't find some technicality to walk." "They won't," Kristen assured me. "We got them cold. And your case has opened up 3 other investigations into rural drug operations. You've done more than save your son. You've helped clean up an entire region." That afternoon, I returned to the motel to pack. My team had already left, returning to base one by one. They'd faced questions about their leave, about what they'd been doing, but Captain Valencia had been true to his word. The official record showed they were supporting a fellow soldier's family emergency, nothing more. Horace Pierce helped me load the last of my gear. "You did good, Ice," he said. "Real good. Couldn't have done it without you. Any of you." That's what brothers do. You need anything, anytime you call. My flight back to Syria left that evening. As I sat in the departure lounge, I video called Tommy. The boy was with Tammy, already settling into their new apartment in Vancouver. When will you be back, Dad? Tommy asked. 3 months. Then I'm home for good. We'll get you signed up for baseball. Maybe go camping. Would you like that? Yeah. Tommy's face lit up, the fear finally gone from his eyes. After he hung up, I leaned back in my chair, feeling the exhaustion finally catch up to me. I'd barely slept in 3 weeks, running on adrenaline and purpose. But it had been worth it. My son was safe. The men who hurt him were in prison. Justice, messy and imperfect as it was, had been served. My phone buzzed. A text from Vince. Safe travels, Ice. See you on the other side. Another from Felix. Drinks when you get back. You're buying. And one from Bill. Already counting down the days until we're stateside again. Tommy's lucky to have you as a father. I smiled, pocketed my phone, and boarded my flight. 3 months later, I kept my promise. I separated from the Rangers and took a training position at Fort Lewis. I bought a house 15 minutes from Tammy's apartment. Tommy's room had a view of Mount Rainier. We went camping in the Cascades. Tommy joined Little League. On weekends, I coached his team. Slowly, carefully, we built a new normal. Sometimes Tommy still had nightmares. Sometimes I did too, different nightmares from different wars. But we faced them together. One evening, as I tucked Tommy into bed, the boy looked up at me with serious eyes. Dad, will you teach me to be brave like you? You already are brave, I said, sitting on the edge of his bed. You called me when you were scared. You told the truth when it mattered. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. But you came and saved me. And someday, when someone needs help, you'll be the one who comes. That's what we do. We protect the people who can't protect themselves. Tommy thought about this, then nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. Okay, I can do that. I kissed his forehead. I know you can, buddy. I know you can. As I left Tommy's room, I paused in the doorway, looking back at my sleeping son. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The desperate phone call, the frantic flight home, the battle against corruption and violence. I thought about the team that had stood with me, the agents who believed me, the people who'd risked their own safety to do what was right. Justice wasn't always clean. It wasn't always easy, but it was always worth fighting for. I turned off the light and closed the door, carrying that truth with me into the night. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done?